Hey, how you doing? Welcome back to the NOTCAST. It's been a couple of weeks since I've done one of these. It is Sunday, I think it's the 11th of February 2024, number 360. And as is always the way, I pick a record and I talk about it. Well, not always. Sometimes I do some other ones. A couple of quick things. If you're a regular viewer, fantastic. You're one of the few. Welcome to a very select club. Or as Derek Small said, getting more selective. If you have, this is your first one, probably not the best one to start for because it's quite niche, but there are other ones which are probably better. But be nice in the comments because they all get thrown in the bin if they're not. Secondly, I haven't done one for about a week and a half for reasons, and I want to talk about my personal life just a teeny weeny little bit, which is the I don't like the first week of February, and specifically I don't like the first Thursday in February. The reason being is that I had two really bad things happen on the first Thursday in February. You think about, what are the worst things that can happen in your life? You can find yourself suddenly splitting up with somebody that you weren't expecting. You can find that somebody that you loved has died unexpectedly. You can find that suddenly you're not employed, and that may have been a shock, and you didn't know before that day that was going to happen. Well, out of those three things which I've mentioned, two of them have happened on the first Thursday in February, and that's meant that I've disliked the first Thursday in February for quite a while. And this year, for the first time in a long time, actually the day came and went without me even thinking about either of those events, and I kind of figured, oh, that's probably better than it could have been. So that was an unexpected thing, actually, and I don't feel quite the superstition that I once felt about that particular day. Second part of this, hang on, I'll just move this microphone a little bit nearer to me. Second part of it is, when I started off doing these NOTCASTs, it was because I didn't have a social life, because I, like everybody else in the world, had to stay indoors and not see their friends for about a year and a half. Now that we're 2 and a bit years after the end of the COVID restrictions, it's fair to say, although COVID hasn't gone away, it's not likely to happen again immediately. And so I've been getting back into my social life. Saw a couple of friends that I haven't seen for a long time, went to a gig or two, lived in the real world, which is kind of scary, very analog, but the graphics are very, very good. So there you have it. That's why I haven't done one for a while. Today, there is no anniversary, no date, nothing like that. I'm just going to be talking about Manic Street Preachers. I'm going to be talking about their most recent album, released on the 10th of September 2021, the Ultra Vivid Lament. And I'm going to be talking about this album, the period that went around it, a couple of solo records. I'm also going to be talking about one of the main tenets, I think, of any discussion about music and music criticism, and when people have opinions about it. Firstly, as I've mentioned previously, gatekeepers think you shouldn't have opinions about things unless you can do it, which is fine, but they've all got opinions about their football teams, and it's okay for them to have opinions about their football teams, but it's not okay for people to have opinions about records unless you are actually a signed recording artist. To which I would get out the big button from the last leg and go, bullshit, because you're quite happy to shout at the ref and tell him he's an FNC, but I'm not allowed to say that I don't like a record. Where's the fairness in that? There isn't any. The other thing I think I was going to mention is I'm going to be a little bit harsh about this period of the band. So if you want gushing fanboy nonsense, go and watch another video, because that's not where we're going to go with this. That's not how it's going to be at all, in the slightest. So in the previous ones where I talked about the Manics, I've talked about the Manics every period of their career, including solo albums. I have been pretty honest about it, and I think the Manics have changed from a band that make great albums to a band that do really good to great songs, and not really great albums. But when you get to your 14th album, the question is, well, what have you got to say, and why are you saying it, and what's the point? And those type of things are things that definitely sit on my mind when I look at a record and go, what's the point of this album? Why is it being made? Is it being made because making records is a thing you do, or is it being made because you've got something that you think is worth hearing, or mistaking something to say with saying something? And they're two very different things, which is why when James Dean Bradfield's second solo record came out in 2017, The Chamber, I didn't pick it up straight away. And in my mind, this record doesn't really sit in the band's chronology. It's a soundtrack to a relatively obscure film. It got a release on vinyl, limited on music on vinyl to 750 copies, which means I think there's only slightly less copies of Suicide Alley, the original 7-inch, than there are of The Chamber. This is worth a lot less money than Suicide Alley. And he did get a CD release. This one's not limited, not numbered, and not particularly collectible. Truth be told, never heard this, actually. Honesty is the best policy. I've never sat there and went, really think I should listen to this. I thought I might rectify this at some point, but I've never got round to it. And I'm sure I will, but an album that's basically instrumentals, it doesn't necessarily float my boat when it comes to James Dean Bradfield. Sorry, dudes. I know you're very talented, but I've never felt the need to put it on and press a button. In the midst of lockdown in April 2020, we did get announced the release of James Dean Bradfield's second solo album properly, called, and this is called Even in Exile. And Even in Exile was released as a vinyl, which I didn't buy, a CD, which I did buy with a signed insert, which I got, and it's a concept album. Now, I hate the word concept album, because unless your concept is, here are the 12 best songs that we've just written and they're about things that matter to us, you kind of sit there and kind of go, do I need to press the bullshit button here? Because I've got an episode coming up about Pink Floyd's The Wall, and that is a concept album and a half. But you kind of sit there and go, well, you're making an album about sad whales that won't fuck? That's not going to be very interesting. Are you going to do an album about the imaginary invasion of the Earth by aliens? Oh, not sure that's going to work, is it? You might even call it War of the Worlds and see how that goes. Or are you going to do a concept album about, well, and you kind of think, well, if you're writing music but you haven't got any lyrics, what's the point necessarily? Find a lyricist and then go with it. Now, the lyrics on this album are written by Nicky Wile's brother, Patrick Jones, and he is a very talented man, Patrick, and I wish he was better known. And this album, every song on the album reflects and talks about a singer whose periods and work I'm not especially conversant with, a guy called Victor Jara, who wrote songs which I think were in Cuba, in the past, and was a folk singer, and much the same way as Let Robinson Sing from Know Your Enemy. A song about a singer, which is perhaps not necessarily what you thought it would be. Now, I bought the CD from the web store, from his website, on the grounds that way you got the signed thing and you got the 5-track downloadable demos from the album. Although I did kind of wonder, why isn't that 5-track on it like a CDR or something? There you are. And some of the songs on here, by the way, really good, instrumentally good, but you kind of sit there and go, when I was listening to this, I was going, it's like 2/3 strength Manics, if that makes sense. Really good, would be good B-sides, absolutely great B-sides, but not necessarily would you want to put some of these songs on a Manics album. And also they have a little bit of a difference in terms of their sound and approach. So you can really tell sometimes what somebody brings to a band by what the solo records sound like. And you kind of go, okay, so that's the kind of guitar lines that you write that don't work with the band. Guitar lines that you write that work with the band, and so on. And obviously this came out in April 2020, right in the middle of the first flush of lockdown, and I was kind of thinking, I'm not sure this is the record I want to be hearing right now. If you take your mind back to 4 years ago, it seems like a lifetime ago and yesterday. It really does. Is that it was so strange to be in that environment where suddenly we were locked indoors. We couldn't leave the house necessarily unless we went to the supermarket. There were no gigs, no cinemas, no pubs, no friends necessarily. Everyone was working on a screen. You never met anybody in person. You know, there are people I worked with that I don't even know how tall they are. Or, for example, what aftershave they use, and if it's a good one or if it honks, because I only ever saw them on a screen. And there are those kind of situations where we looked through it and we went, this was really bloody strange. The most bizarre and strange and unusual period in world history in our lifetime. And I clung to music and I clung to films, and I went back and I listened to old records and watched old films. I pretty much completed Netflix. Watched all of Blake Seven and Space 1999 and restarted Star Trek and Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul. And my God, it was one heck of a long time. And I watched pretty much every film I'd ever thought I'd ever watched ever again. And then I was listening to this and going, not quite sure this is what I need right now. So this album kind of passed me by. I'll be honest about that. Not bad, just not for me, really. And then the Manic said, oh, you know, we're making another record. And it released on the 10th of September 2021, their 14th studio album, the Ultra Vivid Lament. Available here in indie store configuration with a 7-inch single and HMV exclusive alternate sleeve. Which, by the way, I bought this long after the album came out for a significantly reduced price. Because that's the problem, is see, when you do multiple formats of an album and you do coloured vinyls and they're in a Pantone 359 and a slightly different sleeve, and an indie version has got a 7-inch, you end up kind of going, well, if there's not one version I can buy that has everything on, I'm not going to buy every version just to have it in different shades of black. You know, remember this cover here is, you know, black and white with green. This cover is colour with yellow, and it's just like, well, you've just stuck it through a fucking filter, haven't you guys? And then that's it. That's your exclusive HMV version of it with a slightly different sleeve. Doesn't make the record any better, doesn't make it any worse, just makes it slightly duller when you look at it. And of course, if you're colourblind, you might get this version anyway. Now, that sounds bitchy, but ultimately, the mass exploitation of formatting of records is bullshit and nonsense. It doesn't make the records any better. And when you give loads of different bonus tracks and different configurations, different places, I end up looking at it and going, I'm not sure I want to buy all of these. So like Idol's new album, Tank, which is coming out on Friday, which, yes, I have bought a copy of. I didn't buy it when it was announced. I didn't buy the store exclusive. I didn't buy the Blood Records edition with the 10-inch. I waited for the inevitable in-stores to be announced, and I bought a ticket for one of those shows which had the LP in it as well, because I thought, well, that's going to come. I know it's going to come. And if I hold on long enough, it'll happen. You guys will announce it, and then I'll get an Idols gig for pretty much nothing. So I was like, right, yeah, fine, job done. And you get to see them in a smaller place as opposed to in the bigger place. And I kind of sat there and going, all this multi-formatting, you're cutting off your own head here, because you're actually, people that only buy one version of a record are holding on, and they're going to wait and see what happens. And it's a blinking contest. If you're a record collector that likes to collect absolutely everything, great, knock yourself out, build a new wing on your record collector mansion. But not always for me. And I'm of course aware, having 2 vinyl editions of the record with exactly the same track listings, that I'm standing in hypocrisy towers from a very tall thing, and I'm looking down on everybody else. But I'm not really. We're all different. You know, some people want to buy every colour of it, some people don't. The main thing that matters, and has always mattered, is, does the music move you? Does it speak to you? Does it touch you? Does it help you? Because music and art are the most important forms of communication to me. As Peter Saville said, music and art was the resistance, and everything else was just merchandising. And so nobody would buy these records if the band didn't mean something to them. Nobody would buy these records if they didn't like the songs. Nobody would buy these records if the records were shit. Hang on, I bought some shit records. Okay, so let's rewind a bit, pretend I didn't say that, and go, I have a sense of loyalty for the bands that I love, and sometimes I buy records on trust. Is historically, I've trusted their decisions. They have made good records in the past, and I believe that they will continue to make good records. That loyalty has not always been rewarded. As somebody who owns a copy of the Mission's 1996 album, Blue, on CD. I also have the original 1996 vinyl on Equator Records downstairs. Blue's not great, guys. I'll be talking about the Mission at some point. I might skip over that one and not give it a full episode, because there's not very much to say about it, apart from they aren't very good anymore. I didn't have very much to say, and then they split. But I have a sense of loyalty with the bands that I love, is that I trust them and they trust me. And you know, it's an offer, isn't it? You put the record out in the market, you hope that it's good, people will buy it, they'll come to see the shows, you'll be able to get another round, and you'll be able to keep going. Doesn't always work for everybody, works for most bands, and I had to have, you know, 2 bad albums. And then if you have 3 bad albums in a row, Bono's theory is, you know, you have 2 bad albums. If you have a 3rd bad album, game over, guys. And I can think of some bands that have had a 3rd bad album, and I'm like, nah, I don't feel the need to buy this anymore. So, for example, my Motorhead collection only goes as far as, and let me just quickly check, Orgasmatron, which is pretty good, actually. I really like that one. But then I got to the album that was after it, which I think is Rock and Roll, and I thought, not feeling it. So I didn't buy it. And that's how loyalty works sometimes. You stick with things, but by the time you get to the musical equivalent of Friday the 13th, Part 8, A New Beginning, maybe that's what it's called, you end up kind of going, not quite sure I'm going to be in this for the long haul. So, Ultra Vivid Lament. Let's talk about that. First off, the first release from the album, although of course it didn't come in the form which I'm about to show you, was a download and online streamable single called Orwellian. This was released digitally pretty much the day that the record was announced. There's a trailer for it sometime around about early 2021. And as a record, Orwellian, and as an album, Ultra Vivid Lament, deliberately avoided any mentions or references of the COVID-19 pandemic that were going on around you. It's a song that is around effectively how we live in Orwellian times. Now, I'm going to take umbrage with the phrase Orwellian times because, yeah, we live in the age of double plus ungood, groupthink and all that, but also we live in the age of if we're living in Orwellian times, we're living in Animal Farm, we're living in the roads of Wigan Pier, we're living in the world of Love in a Time of Cholera or whatever it's called, although I know that's not a George Orwell book. We're living in a time of dystopia, but with a hope for the future. We don't live in Orwellian times anymore. Yes, we live in a post-truth reality, and by that, what I mean is people believe in manifesting events, and they kind of go, well, if I believe in this, then I can believe that is true, and if I believe it is true, then that is my reality. And Philip K. Dick said, reality is that which refuses to go away when you cease to believe in it. So I think that, yes, the concept of living in Orwellian times does refer to things like client journalism, does refer to things like perhaps the rampant loyalty that we have in the right-wing parties in the UK and the US, where it really doesn't matter how bad the guys are, they'll always vote for their team because, fuck it, that's my guy, that's my team. And you kind of sit there and go, Trump and Johnson are the best guys you've got? Wow. It's kind of like, sitting there and going, inanimate carbon rod is employee of the month. Well, it really is not very good at all. And then the other element about what's Orwellian is that kind of idea of, well, if you say that right is wrong, war is peace, love is hate, freedom is slavery, that type of thing, you kind of go, well, actually you're looking at an inverse of what's going on. And then there's a gap between the perception of reality and the depiction of reality and the reality itself that people are experiencing. So it's the name, I mean, Orwellian is kind of like an idea of talking about the idea of digital overload as well, the idea of a kind of like just this river of unstoppable digital information and misinformation where we're overloaded with information. It's difficult to pick out what's real and what isn't real, what's opinion and what's fact and what is truth, because truth is two separate things, actually, fact and truth, because facts are inalterable realities and truth is an interpretation of that reality, and this is my truth. Tell me yours, as Nye Bevan would have it. Also talking about the totalitarian nature of society, so the way in which society, as I've mentioned and referred to client journalism, that's where effectively you have journalism in the mass media that's had restricted access to people such as politicians, such as Tucker Carlson's very recent interview with Vladimir Putin, and Trump saying things, they're very fine people on both sides, both the people that want to, hang the people that are elected representatives and the people that don't. And it's like, no, that's not how it works, okay? Because there's a thing called the tolerance paradox, who, by the way, aren't an American hardcore band. The tolerance paradox is a philosophical idea around that, is where you have to tolerate everything except the intolerant. So, thinking from an Indiana Jones point of view, bet you didn't think I'd go there, neither did I. That's the problem, is I open my mouth, words come out, and then suddenly my brain's catching up and going, where are you going to go with this, dude? So, the idea is punching Nazis is always cool, according to a T-shirt on News Thump. And then someone else goes, oh, no, you're intolerant left. And it's like, well, hang on a minute. If the left managed to rule the world, they'd probably just want everyone to eat lasagna and have cats. Whereas, if certain far extremes of political viewpoints, most obviously authoritarianism, fascism, totalitarianism, those type of thing. They're saying, well, actually, we want to round up all the people that are poorer, and we want to round up the people that look different. We want to put them in camps, and then we put them onto boats, and we expose them to, measles and cholera and God knows what else. And we have a lot of right-wing pundits saying, I want to sit on a boat machine gunning immigrants in dinghies. And you kind of go, how is that tolerant? How does that not invoke the tolerance paradox? And the tolerance paradox, the idea behind that is, if you tolerate everything, inevitably you tolerate intolerance, and then the intolerant ideas, such as I want to shoot immigrants with a machine gun, become the ones that become the dominant narrative, and then they start to oppress everybody else. And that is where it sits. That's the Orwellian part of it. Is that, yes, we do live in Orwellian times. We live in bizarre, weird times in human history. I'd never known civilization as a whole to be so shockingly unhappy with the state of things. Not since probably 1990, maybe, when we had the poll tax riots, or 1995, when the only thing that Britain had going for it really was Britpop and David Bowie, because we were being led by a zombie government that was on something like its second leader in its fourth election. With the idea of a society now that exists purely on the surface, where what is told is more important than what is real, and then you have a misinformed kind of view of reality. You sit there and going, well, the existence of this proves the existence of God, and you can sit there and go, well, the existence of that definitely doesn't prove the existence of God. And you kind of go, well, the idea that, the holy wars, the punishment due, the conflict that sits alongside those, the conflict that's currently going on in Israel and Gaza, frankly, it's genocide. Okay, it really, really is, and I'm tired of holding my tongue about that. The idea that a government can hide behind or claim anybody that criticises them to be a certain thing when they're not is kind of like a obvious distortion of reality, and that's where we talk about living in Orwellian times. So Orwellian is a great single, by the way, getting away from that subject and back onto this. Really enjoy it, but like the other lead singles, International Blue, for example, Show Me the Wonder, Take Me to the Bridge, those type of things, you kind of sit there and go, is it a great song? Pretty good. In 2007, Orwellian would have been the third single from the album. In this year, it's the best single from the album, and it's the only one that gets a physical release. Orwellian only got released physically as a 7-inch, and the 7-inch only got released physically inside the indie record store's exclusive 7-inch and LP set. So that's the bonus track that comes with the vinyl editions of the Ultra Vivid Lament. I ordered this, I think, from Banquet in Kingston, who are a fantastic record shop. I used to live in Kingston. Banquet opened about 6 weeks after I moved. Damn, guys, missed my chance. But there you are. And then you've got, this is the standard Indies version here. So the standard Indies version doesn't come in any colours or anything like that. It comes with a 7-inch. And, well, black's a colour, right? So it comes in black. That's your colour, and you're going to like it. And it's a 12-track album, I think, 11-track album. So we're going to go through the album, track by track, and I'm going to bitch about some of the songs on there. What I do have to say about the Ultra Vivid Lament before I start off is, yeah, it's their 14th album. And a 14th album means you've said a lot of things already. What is there new to explore? What is there new to say? What is there new to play? And you think about where the Manics sit in relation to, let's say, where the Cure sit. Cure released their first thing in 1978. Manics released their first proper single in 1990. So if the Manics are 12 years behind the Cure, the Manics are now at, let me just work it out, the 4 years since their last album running out to Things to Say period of their career, and are on about roughly the same number of albums as the Cure. The Ultra Vivid Lament is an album which doesn't always have anything to say. And when you sit there as a listener, I'm sitting there as a listener, I'm going, okay, so you've made an album, you've got 11 songs, you've got 11 things to say, it's been 3 years since your last album, all you have to do is write 4 good lyrics a year, 1 good lyric every 3 months. Now, I know I'm probably more prolific as a writer than most other people, but writing, and let's say 3 verses and a chorus, 44 verses effectively, over 11 songs in 4 years, is not fucking hard, okay? You've got to write basically 1 verse, 4 lines a month. Easy peasy lemon squeezy, right? You want to break that down a bit further? One line a week. Not bloody difficult, but it is if you're Kate Bush, it is if you're Axl Rose, and by the bounds of some of the lyrics that are on here, it is if you're on here. Now, I've also made the mistake, although I don't think it's a mistake, of reviewing both the album that I wanted and the album that I got, and talking about the gap between the two. Because as far as I'm concerned, the Ultra Vivid Lament is somewhere near the bottom of the pack when it comes to looking at Manic's albums. So much so, I only saw them once on this tour, and I saw the show that was at Kingston Prism from Banquet Records, hence why I got this, so I could see the band play an acoustic show and do a Q&A, which would be different because I've seen the Manics a lot of times. They are my third most seen band. The top one is the Wonder Stuff, which is at about 169 times. The second one is Suede, which is at over 70. The Manics are at about 57-ish, but I paced it out, so now I see them once per album, as opposed to whereas I used to see them 6 times per album. The reason I don't go to see them so often is because the set lists are always the same. They play the same 17 hits from the 90s, and then they play 3 songs off the new album, and maybe Your Love Alone Is Not Enough, and one weird song. And it's boring. It's like seeing a Welsh AC/DC. If you vary your sets around, I will see you more often, okay? That's how it works. If you're going to charge top notch, let's say £60 for me to stand in an arena and see 17 songs that I've been seeing you perform for the past 25 years, when it was 15 quid 25 years ago, and now it's 70 quid or 60 quid, I'm kind of going, I'm not getting anything new out of this. I'm not getting any new experiences at all. It's like paying a lot of money to see a re-release of Star Wars, and the film never changes. Just every time you see Star Wars, it's the same film. The actors look at, I mean, what if you remade Star Wars every 4 years? And then the price of the tickets, let's say it was £15 in 1990. But it went up to, let's say, it went up to 70 quid or something. And then you kind of go, well, what's that all about? How does that work? I don't know. Hang on a second. It's a difficult situation to be in. That really, really is. So that's why I don't go and see the Manics so much. Obviously, I'm going to see them twice this summer because they're playing with Suede. But I'm seeing Suede, and the Manics is basically just a bonus because I'm like, I'll just go see the Manics every once in a while. So for this album, let's stop bitching about them, because it's pretty clear that I'm not. My love for the Manics has changed over time. The band have changed, I've changed, we've grown apart in different directions, and I still think one member of the band is very thin-skinned and quite annoying. But as an album, this didn't do what I wanted it to do. So coming out of Trump, coming out of Boris Johnson, coming out of COVID-19, coming out of riots, conflict, war, recession, lies, Brexit, and you kind of sit there and go, you're deliberately going to avoid all of those things. You're not going to address any of those things, that the fact that the world is in turmoil, and you're going to gaze at your own navel. So the opening lyric in Still Snowing in Sapporo, which is a good song, by the way, is I'm walking on my own. It's 1993. The heavy snow is falling like an angel over me. And I'm kind of going, so you're talking about something that happened 28 years ago, whilst the rest of the world is on fire. And whilst I understand we as individuals, we all have our mythologies, we all have our ideologies, we all have our experiences, we all have our connections to certain songs and things like that. What we don't have and what we can't have is to be oblivious to the world that's outside of each other. Okay, especially not when the band have so clearly pinned their mast to the idea of political, economic, social, technological things. The chorus on Little Baby Nothing is culture, alienation, boredom and despair. Yet 30 years later, whilst the world is probably in its most unhappy, most volatile state, you're writing albums that don't even refer to the fact that we've been in lockdown for 18 months. It's not irresponsible. The artist has the right to do whatever they want. It isn't what I wanted, it isn't what I expected, and it isn't what I thought the band could have done. So there you are, I'm reviewing the album that I should have had and not the album that I got. And then of course kind of go, is it the fans that are wrong? Or it's maybe all of them, and then I sound like Seymour Skinner or somebody, I don't know. whilst COVID-19 was, and is referred to in the album in very oblique terms, the element of a waking dream. And James Dean Bradfield said, writing music was a way of pinching myself to say there's still a part of life that is the way it works the way it did in a strange way. But that was it. There wasn't a reference to what we've lost, the people who we lost on the way. You know, I lost friends, I lost family. You know, 3 people I know committed suicide as a result of COVID. More than several people I know died as a result of it. And there's no reference to that whatsoever whilst we went through what was the most traumatic period in our world history. And it just wasn't mentioned at all in any tangible way. It wasn't what I expected at all. Now, there are some bands, so for example, Suede, who I absolutely love and adore, who'd written and recorded most of the songs during the pandemic and before the pandemic, so there was no point then rewriting the whole album. But this album came out and it was written and recorded in the midst of. It wasn't mostly done and then recorded. It was written and recorded in the midst of. And then to take your eye off that was like Sauron looking over there to go, oh, look, some ducks. Whilst, you know, the Battle of Mordor is happening over there. I don't know, maybe Sauron would have killed the ducks. No space for the fluffy things in Mordor. And shot them with eye lasers, who knows. But so, Still Snowing in Sapporo, first track on the album, really good musically. I rate it quite highly, but it was inspired very clearly by the Japan tour of 1992, seen in the video for Motorcycle Emptiness, 1993, and it's self-referential. It's a hall of mirrors, which obviously Kraftwerk mentioned in their track Hall of Mirrors. It's the idea of an artist looking at themselves. Now, all art should be about the artist's experience in their own life, but it shouldn't be solely about that, because otherwise you end up like Sammy Hagar and writing songs called things like I really, really love tacos and spicy wines. And then you kind of go, as an audience member, I have difficulty relating to that. And you end up having to think about, well, you know, the music isn't just made for the artist. The meaning that applies in the art is exhibited and created when it gets into the ears of the listener, and the listener brings their own ideas to it. Otherwise, it becomes almost like a snake eating itself. And you think about Pink Floyd's The Wall, which I've mentioned before. It is very much the Roger Waters ego show, where he's talking about his own problems, the fact that he misses his dad, the Second World War, and how it's awful to be a millionaire and play stadiums. And, you know, as an audience member, irrespective of the success of The Wall commercially, you kind of go, I'm feeling a little bit alienated by these lyrics. I can't relate to them at all. So, as somebody who's never been to Japan, a lyric that says, I'm walking on my own like it's 1993 and it's still snowing in Sapporo, and you kind of go, having never been to Japan, I'm not sure I can fully grasp that. Okay, I just can't. So, you know, if the purpose of art is to communicate to the listener an idea, a feeling, a sense, an emotion, and something that perhaps they can get a sense of empathy and affinity to, the idea that you can listen to it and go, I feel like that too. I feel less alone in this situation. Or as James sang on the live versions of Say Something, you're not alone in this world. Say something, say anything. You know, the idea is that you suddenly go, I can't relate to that song. So it's a good song, but I'm sat there going, I have no life experience I can apply to me being young and being in Japan and full of dreams. So you kind of go, maybe it's a bit alienating. Maybe it isn't. I don't quite know. And then we have Orwellian, which is the second track on the album, which I've mentioned before. And I mean, even in Orwellian, the line about where he says, you know, it feels impossible to pick a side. I'm like, come on, guys. Indiana Jones led the way. Don't be a Nazi, dude. It's not difficult. It really, really isn't, you know. You've got on the side that wants to run people over when they don't want to be choked by policemen, and you've got the other side that sit there and go, look, can we just fill the world with rabbits and spaghetti, you know? And it's kind of go, I think I know which side I'm on, guys. But Orwellian is, you know, it's a good song, not a great song, good song, but as I said, would have been the third single from the album in 2007. We then have The Secret He Had Missed, which features guest vocals from Julia Cumming. And The Secret He Had Missed is, again, it's a concept song. It's not a song about lived experience. So in much the same way that Even in Exile was around Victor Jura, The Secret He Had Missed, the lyric was around, I think, a Welsh poet called Augustus John and Gwyn John, a husband and wife kind of pair that both worked in art, and the relationship they had between them. And you kind of sit there going, I mean, certainly I was sat there going, it's a song about something I've got no experience of, I can't relate to. Frank Turner, who did his album No Man's Land in 2019, all songs about historical women. That's not what I'm hoping for when I listen to a song. When I listen to a song, I'm hoping for something that speaks to me about the world I live in, and that communicates to me an idea or a concept, or sheds some light upon the reality that we're living in. And an album about historical figures that I don't know anything about, I might as well go and listen to Iron Maiden for that, and then write a web page called Everything I Know About World History I Learned from Iron Maiden, which, by the way, I am going to do Iron Maiden shortly. So yeah, that's going to be fun, isn't it? Rocked my hair off. But The Secret He Had Missed is, again, a song that, to me, because as a listener, you have an idea around what a band does, and you have an idea around what a band's good at, and you kind of, as a listener, you kind of go, so the Manics work in this particular arena, and it'd be like going to see a James Bond film and actually ending up with a 2-hour kind of single room monologue by George Lazenby about how he misses his wife, and that would be the follow-up to On Her Majesty's Secret Service, and it would be called The Spy Who Loved Me, and then you kind of go, yeah, it'd be really good. Well, it might not be really good if George Lazenby was doing it. It'd be really good, but it's not what James Bond is. Now, that sounds awful and bitchy, because when a band gets into a box, and you know, as a fan, you kind of go, you get in the box, you never get out of the box. You stay in the box, you do the thing. I pay the money, you jump. You're a performing seal. And the band could go, back off, you know, or whatever. But as a band, there is a contract with the fans, which is don't suck, basically, and write songs that are good, and keep being good, or the best that you can be. And if you do that, generally you'll keep people with you forever. Whereas for me, the Manics turned from being a band that were being fantastic and wrote about the world and the reality that we lived in, to a band that started to look inwards, to the exclusion of being able to communicate with their fans. Not to say that they weren't engaged in what they were doing or interested in what they were doing. It's just, as a fan, I was kind of going, this isn't what I need from the band, and this isn't what I need from my artists or my music. So The Secret He Had Missed is a song that doesn't rock my boat, it's fair to say. And then we have The Quest for Ancient Colour. And again, I don't know, what does The Quest for Ancient Colour mean? I'm not quite sure. You know, I had a very bad dream. The main actor in it was me. My scream has lost its source. What are you saying? What are you trying to communicate? Sure, there's an element of Grandpa Simpson, where he goes, modern life was killed and crushed by a derelict digitized love. My scream had lost its source like a river in a summer drought. But I'm not sure what you're trying to communicate to me here, apart from the fact that, you know, you like the days when books came on paper and not on screens. Sure, James Lee Bradfield learnt piano in lockdown, and so this is the first Manic song that's been written on piano. But what else are you trying to communicate here? My time is a currency. I don't get any more of it. So when I listen to an album, I will expect someone the song to grab me by the throat and go, this song needs to come out. I need to say this. And if you don't have that compulsion, if you don't have that connection, if you don't have that, you know, the idea of commitment to the song, I, as a listener, am going to find it difficult to commit to a song. I really am. The fifth track is Don't Let the Night Divide Us. Now, this is the nearest thing to anything political on the album, apart from Orwellian, because the chorus is, don't let those boys from Eton suggest that we are beaten. No, no, no. And it's political, but if you're going to show your teeth, you better bite. And it's not here. You know, the Manics could have created an articulate, incisive, furious dismantlement of the terrible political situation that we're in, the corruptocracy that the UK and the world has become, the incompetency of boosterist politics that exist in sound bites, and instead they just went, yeah, don't let the guys from Eton tell us we're beaten. It's like, really? That's the message? I was disappointed, and I don't like being disappointed. This band were once incredibly important to me, and it feels to me like, you know, we've grown apart over the years. In fact, even having a song called Diapause, which is the next song on the album, song 6, and what the fuck is a diapause anyway? I don't know. I genuinely, I have no idea what a diapause is. So maybe I haven't looked in the Cambridge Oxford English Dictionary. I'm not sure, but I don't have a clue. Side 2 then, Complicated Illusions on side 2. And Complicated Illusions has 2 demos. I should point out, by the way, there is a deluxe edition of the album. The demos are on here. I'll get to that in a moment. But there are 2 demos, one by James Dean Bradfield, one by Nicky Byer. And officially, Complicated Illusions was a single. But bands don't release singles anymore. They don't put out physical singles. They don't even put out downloads. They don't put out B-sides. The only way that Complicated Illusions became a single was by virtue of the fact that it had a video that was uploaded to YouTube. And that doesn't really make it a single, in my opinion. It just makes it a song with a video, which isn't a fucking single. Especially if you can't buy it on its own and there's no B-sides, there's no cover art, there's no remixes, there's nothing. Again, it's a single, but it bloody well isn't, because the idea of a single has become very, what's the word? Like foggy, really. You don't know where a single starts and an album track begins. So track 8, Into the Waves of Love. Now that sounds like could have been written by anybody, really. Could have been a track off the Kylie album, which came out a couple of years ago, Disco. I'm falling into the waves of love. I won't be drowning because I'm falling in your arms, for example. Could have been the lyrics if it was the Kylie version. Obviously, Kylie would sing it better and in a higher key than me. Think of me as the songwriter in the background that gets the guys and girls to sing the songs because my voice sounds like a strangled lion or something. Into the Waves of Love is a twee, lovely lyric. It's not necessarily what I want from the Manics, but it is a lovely lyric that's about, it's sweet, it's obvious, it's got a counterpoint vocal, a second vocal from Kat Southall, who I think sings on it as well. And Into the Waves of Love is, it's a good love song, but it does break the Manics manifesto. No fan clubs, no encores, no love songs. Oops. Got that one wrong, guys. I mean, obviously every agent defects, every artist sells out, as William Burroughs said, but you kind of then go, you've changed. And I'm not trying to be bitchy. It's just, when I aligned myself to bands 30, 35 years ago, I had ideas about what that band was, what that band stood for, and what that band was going to become. You pin your colours to the mast of a band, and then sometimes you have to go, maybe not anymore. So, track 9 is Blank Diary Entry, featuring the sadly lost Mark Lanegan, formerly vocalist for the Screaming Trees, amazing voice, saw him live a few times. Not my favourite, but you could tell. Like sometimes when you watch people as artists or musicians or whoever, and you kind of go, okay, not really my thing, but you're really good at this. Like when I watch, this is going to sound awful. Actually, everything I'm going to say sounds awful. When I watch, what's the name? The guy that did the Orville. When I watch his stuff, and I kind of go, yeah, you're good at what you do, but it's not really for me. That type of thing. Did Ted as well. I can't remember his name now. It doesn't matter. You watch him and I go, yeah, you're really good at what you do. It's not my thing, right? It just isn't. And then I kind of go, are the Manics still my thing? Probably not. But I'm loyal and sentimental, and I'm going to keep going because there's going to come a time when the songs are going to end, the song is over, and I'm going to go, I should have seen them more. I should have seen them more because there'll never be another chance. Felt like that about Motorhead, felt like that about Pink Floyd, starting to feel like that about U2. But I hope to see them again before they run out of road. Is kind of just sit there and go, all right, not my thing. Maybe we've grown apart. But Mark Lanegan, perfect voice for this track. And it's a lovely, strange song, actually. It's one of the strangest songs on the album. It feels like an odd little B-side. It's a little weirder. It's a little less obvious than the rest of the tracks on the album. It's got a weird drifting off ending. I really like it. Actually, really, really like it. I haven't met a Mark Lanegan vocal that I didn't appreciate, even if he wasn't the best singer in the world. Certainly better than Bob Dylan. Then again, I'm better than Bob Dylan, so not saying much. Very talented man, and I miss knowing that he's around. I miss knowing that Shane McGowan's around. I miss knowing that Sinead O'Connor's around, and just making stuff and doing things and living life, because that's what I wanted. I just want the artists that I like and respect to just you keep doing your thing for as long as you can do it, and you stop when you think you've run out of things to say. Doesn't always stop a band though, does it? Right, so 2 more tracks on the album, Happy, Board Alone. Track 10. There's an ABBA influence in this. You may not think it when you listen to it, but the rhythms to Happy Board Alone feel like ABBA, that kind of 16th hi-hat, groovy, kind of rigid bass that I don't know how to explain it, but when I hear it, I kind of go, you've been listening to ABBA, haven't you? And that's not always a bad thing, because ABBA are fantastic. Again, not always my thing, but pretty good. And then the last track on the album is After Ending. And After Ending is the nearest thing to a Brexit song, really. As the flags fall down, the statues crack and drown, we clap for a crumbling state, inventing rules which we can break and take no blame. It's too little, too late to salvage the rest of the album. The whole album, post-Brexit, post-COVID, post-Trump, post-Johnson, should have been a litany of failure pointed at the people that know better and can't be fucking bothered. And this album is kind of going, I'm going to think about what happened in Japan in 1993. I'm not going to think about this. Now, I understand distraction and diversion activity is really, really important. And sometimes it's really important to focus on things that aren't the most obvious screaming problem right in front of your eyes. But it's equivalent to deliberately turn away from the object in front of you when that is your reality. Equivalence, by the way, is a word that means a willful dereliction of duty, and its existence and reality is disputed because it was put in, it was printed with the idea of being an imaginary word, and then it became an actual word, although it's not very well known. And After Ending is a song, equivalence, by the way, is what the UK and the US had as their leaders between, well, in the UK 2016 and now, and in the US between 2017 and 2021 under the guise of the Cheeto Hitler. After Ending is the post-Brexit reality. It is the promise of a future that disappeared and never came to pass. It is about the loneliness and anxiety of lockdowns, the disintegration of society, the consequence of having consequence-free decisions. The idea that you can break anything and get away with it, because if it doesn't hurt you, it doesn't matter. You know, it's about portraits of loneliness and indifference. The quote that comes from The Great Gatsby, the one about they were careless and they broke things and people and just carried on doing whatever it is that they were doing. And I read that quote and I was like, we are living in a world where we are led by the worst among us. And I think the word for that is a Kazakhstocracy, but I could be wrong. I like to think of it also as a corruptocracy. Basically, I'm not voting for the current government at the next election. That's probably not a surprise given the contents of my record collection. There are 3 extra songs on the album, or on the associated releases. The Japanese CD of the Ultra Livid Lament, which I don't have, features a song called My Drowning World, and then one called These Dark Roads. And My Drowning World is around the death of Nicky Wire's mother from leukemia in 2018, and then his father in 2019, the pandemic and a summation of everything in our lives up to this point, the path that we have taken, how we have got to here, and then the loss that we have experienced as a result of it. I thought during lockdown, we might never come back to this. We might never get back to gigs. I might never see my friends. I might never leave my town. I might just have to walk everywhere for the rest of my life. And the world is going to end up like, you know, the 1800s or something, where you had 3 pack mules and a horse and a whip. And that was your land. And that was it. Obviously, we're through the other side of that. But there was this great period of uncertainty, this terrible uncertainty, where we didn't know what was going to happen. So the Ultra Vivid Lament also came in another configuration. So aside from your Indies LP with the 7-inch and the HMV in the weird photoshopped, filtered version of it, I think this one is probably called HMV in the Instagram filters. There was also the expanded edition book pack, which was signed, which you could buy from the band's website, which was signed by the 3 members of the band. This features a CD of demos. The demos are every track from the album, some appearing twice. So, for example, as I said, Don't Let the Night Divide Us has 2 demos, one with Nicky Wire and one with James Dean Bradfield. And then Complicated Illusions has 2 demos, the Nicky Wire home demo, and the James Dean Bradfield demo, and then you've got the rest of the album. Signed book pack, same size configuration as your other book packs. So Journal for Plague Lovers, for example, Send Away the Tigers, Know Your Enemy, and then the contemporary releases, National Treasures, Postcards from a Young Man, Futurology, Rewind the Film, and the other one, Resistance is Futile. And again, moving away from the more kind of obvious European imagery that you've got on things like Futurology into somewhat anonymous pictures of architecture. Now, I'm kind of wondering what is the point of putting these in there. Sometimes it reminds me of the latter works of Terence Malick, things like Song to Song, Knight of Cups, where you've got the stylistic correctness, but the style was part of was the medium, and the message was what was important. And so you kind of go, is the message actually here? And I can't work it out. I really can't. This one, for example, language of virus without reason. What does that mean? I don't know. It's like someone's picked out random lines from the song and put it over pictures of things and went, yeah, fuck it, that's a deluxe edition, and put your cassette, put your demos on there. Really, I was hoping that the band would have more in their artwork, more meaning, more ideas, more things to communicate. This image, this is one which I think has really struck me. This one here on the LP, the idea says, I write entirely to find out what I'm thinking, what I'm looking at, what I see and what it means, what I want and what I fear. And that was something that really kind of struck me when the record came out. That's what writing is, that's what creative activity is. All art is in some form. It's a way of trying to interpret the world and bring it back to you in a way that makes sense. It's a really important thing to do. Certainly I don't understand people that don't write or don't create or don't do songs, but then again, they don't understand me, and that's okay, because it would be boring if we all understood each other. There'd be less conflict, but it would be boring. And that is Manic's Ultra Vivid Lament, the 14th studio record by the band. Now, it feels like I've been giving it a kicking for the past 50 minutes. Genuinely, I'm not. I love this band. This band have a lot of meaning to me. I just have grown apart from them. The direction they've gone in is not the direction I've gone in, and I'm not sure if that's a permanent state of affairs or a temporary state of affairs. I just don't know. But what I do know is I'm always going to be listening. I'm always going to be paying attention. I'm always going to be following this band through history to try and work out, where are they? What are they going? Because to me, I'm really, really interested in bands that don't rest on their laurels. I'm really interested in bands that make new material, that write new material, that say something. Even if I don't agree with what they're saying, it's really important that they're saying it, that they're trying it, and that they're trying to make sense of the world around them, day by day, song by song. Because the songs are the things that saved my life. They changed my life. They shed light upon things that were dark to me. They helped me in times. My record collection was a friend when I had no friends. And the longest lasting relationship I've got is with my record collection, which is both tragic and admirable, depending on your point of view. And the Manics are going to be one of the key components of that, probably for the rest of my life. Although I do always remember James Dean Bradfield's statement in The Enemy in 1998, when he was talking about when the band got to 2030 and they released their 15th album called Ice. And I was like, we're really close to that point now. I hope the next album isn't called Ice, because if that's the case, we have a prophet, a rock Nostradamus. But of course, as David Bowie said, the future belongs to those that can see it coming, and forever delayed is how it is. So I'm going to wrap up here. Thanks for spending 53 minutes with me, probably longer than the album. Take care of yourselves and each other. Stay beautiful, beautiful ones, and I will see you again soon. Wow, as Owen Wilson would say in Cars. I now have to press the button and go, thank you so much for watching this if you made it to the end. I can't promise you anything in the way of enlightenment, but I can promise you that the washing up maybe went a little bit quicker. Bye.